Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Meet the Experts. We are getting close to our 100th episode. I think this is, I'm not really sure. I think it's 84, 85. But Meet the Experts, if you're wondering what the heck you're watching right about now, let me give you a quick tutorial brief on what Meet the Experts is. It is the anti-podcast, right? It is a place where we just help business owners create video content that maybe they wouldn't do on their own, right? It's not a comfortable thing interviewing yourself. So it's another way to get a media appearance and some good, we usually refer to it as get a year's worth of video content in less than 30 minutes or a 25-30 minute interview. This is a really cool service that we provide for small business owners, entrepreneurs, founders, leaders, even just executives at companies. Anybody who has a product or service that they want to share about, and maybe video isn't where, that's not what they do, right? If you want to be a guest on Meet the Experts, though, I will tell you how, but you're going to have to wait till the end of the episode. So watch the episode. I will tell you how you can be a guest on a future episode of Meet the Experts. It doesn't cost you anything, and we'd love to have you. So that being said, Meet the Experts is sponsored by Journey Builder, all-in-one marketing software and CRM, customer relationship management tool. If you're interested in throwing out 30 different marketing tools that you're paying subscriptions on to have one nice all-in-one package to do all of your digital marketing, all of your customer communications, and all of your customer management, we need to talk. So stick around to the end of the episode or just reach out to us. Getjourneybuilder.com is that website. And let's turn our attention to today's guest. Here today with Scott Hoffman. Bring him up in just a second on screen. Scott is an experienced business investor and operator in multiple industries. And I love this. When describing Scott, the Pittsburgh Business Journal suggested that the only job he hadn't had was a cowboy. And I hope I don't bring him on the screen and tell me that his most recent job was as a cowboy. So without further ado, Scott, good morning. How are you? Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well, and the good news is, despite how much I love watching Yellowstone, I have not still been employed as a cowboy.
I love it. And Yellowstone is a good show. I love that. We probably do a whole nother podcast on that if there aren't 30 different podcasts on Yellowstone already.
Yeah, the business lessons of Yellowstone.
Yes, right. Woo, some rough ones there.
Everybody should have a cliff to throw their competition off of. That would be episode 1.
Just over state lines. Yeah, just over.
That's right.
Well, cool. Well, let's then tell us a little bit more about Scott and who you are and what you do.
So I was a senior sales guy for about 20 years. Started as a sales manager. Really started as an outside sales guy. 6 weeks later, they handed me a sales team. Had no idea what I was doing. Figured it out. Ended up with a really successful team and continued up through the sales ranks. My last corporate job, I was a national VP of outside sales and built an outside sales team for a really big company. Then spent 10 years as a full stack marketer. Clients were Tony Robbins, Neil Patel, et cetera. And for the last, I can't even remember how many years, and really going back to as a marketer, an investor in businesses, an operator of companies, and all of that kind of culminating on where I am now with Burgeon Fund.
That's awesome. All right, so let's talk about Burgeon Fund. So let's talk about like who is it that you help and exactly how do you help them? What are some of your services?
So Burgeon Fund is really focused on acquiring companies, the companies I refer to as need to have versus nice to have. So we'll tend to focus on those businesses, whether they're B2B or B2C, that are needed in the community. The reality is, as we're going through what a lot of the media is calling this great wealth transfer, business owners don't have there just aren't a lot of buyers active in the marketplace. And what happens is that the community knowledge that business has built up over decades just disappears because the business owner is forced to close the company down and sell it essentially as a garage sale to sell off whatever assets they have left. And so we really kind of stepped into that space to acquire companies that are clearly established and profitable, and either stitch them together with others or expand them out, or in every case to develop what I affectionately call a third leg, which is a new revenue stream that the business's founders either couldn't envision or didn't envision over the time they were building the company.
Gotcha. So when you, and I'm gonna kind of add, just piggyback on that a little bit. So when you invest in and maybe buy the business, right? Are you keeping the employees and managing it, or are you just, or what does that usually typically look like?
Yeah, our goal is that there either's already a day-to-day management team in place, or that we can put a leader or leadership team in place fairly rapidly. The value in the business is really the people as much as anything. So it's creating new opportunities for them because we're going to kind of breathe a lot of new life into that company. And in some cases, it may even mean shifting employees from one company that we've acquired to a different one that's a better fit for their skill set and experience. But the goal is to always retain, because again, that tribal knowledge, that community information base, as long as we keep that employee base at least loosely together, then we're able to take advantage of that knowledge base as well.
That's really smart. I love that. That's really, and I forgive me if I just missed that, but do you stay in pretty much one sector? I think you said B2C, but you did mention B2B. So or do you stay in one sector? Like, are all these businesses that you look at buying related?
Right now we're focused on what we call core companies. So that would be, number one would be bookkeeping, accounting, finance, and tax. Number two would be HR and recruiting. Three would be outsource IT, SaaS, managed service providers, so kind of the IT space. Four would be full stack digital marketing. And the fifth would be non-franchise insurance. And so those are the industries that we initially focused on, because part of our plan is that we take all of those back office functions out of every company that we acquire, and then those companies are servicing each other and future acquisitions as vendors, but where the services are being right-sized and right-priced, there's an immediate savings to us, which flows directly to our investors in the fund, because we get those services right-sized. So then we can continue in those niches and go vertically, either in a roll-up or a franchise out or adding corporate locations. But at that point, we'll also be able to expand out. The reality is there's just some really cool companies out there for sale, tenured companies, not leading edge, companies that have been around. And sometimes I look at them and say, wow, is that really a company? And is that company really doing $5 million a year? And so because there's so few buyers in the marketplace, I don't know that I've ever seen a blue ocean quite like what I'm seeing right now in business buying.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to talk to you about that later too. I mean, that's like right up my alley, and something that I just don't have that much knowledge of. I have been going through this series recently where we've been talking with a lot of M&A people, a lot of investors, a lot of franchisors, like, and franchise business people. Like, we've been in this space where there's a lot of buying and selling and creation of new businesses or existing business sales. So it's been, top of mind. And the more people I interview about this, the more fascinated I become at the exactly what you just said, that kind of, it seems like a blue ocean is there now. And it's a great time to do that. But, so obviously then just to move on a little bit, I'm sure you've helped, lots of people in business, lots of businesses manage moves happen, making transactions happen, and doing right by people, right? Because that's how we stay in business, obviously. Have you ever gotten that one testimonial or win that kind of, if I said, hey, give me a quick win that you got for somebody, or a testimonial that you got from somebody, that just kind of gets you up in the morning and keeps you going?
Yeah, if you'd asked me this 30 days ago, I probably would have given you a different answer. Just in the last couple of weeks, I had a client reach out to me, and they had what they believed to be a really complex problem. And I was able to solve it just in conversation within a couple of minutes. And what he really said to me, and what resonated with me most, was that I have this ability that I guess I developed over all these decades, but the ability to take things that a lot of people might think are really complex, and break them down into really simple bites, whether that's through an analogy or a story, or I call it drawing a word picture and letting somebody walk into it.
Okay.
So as an example, circling back to the blue ocean we were talking about, there's 2.4 million small businesses across the US that are owned by founders that are retirement age or older. 80% of them, and this is not my number, 80% of them will not find a buyer and will close down and sell their assets in a garage sale. That's the blue ocean that we've been swimming in. So you don't suffer from a lack of businesses. It's really being smart in your due diligence and finding the right business. But even when whether I'm seem to be communicating with my co-sponsors or teaching managers how to be better managers, drawing word pictures and analogies and things that just seem to come naturally to me seem to really help other people to get over the hump of a business problem or a development hurdle.
That's awesome. That is awesome. That's having those traits, whether developed or innate, just these traits to be able to do that. Like for me, it's when I get up in front of a group of people always say, wow, you should do more of this. Like you're a good teacher. People are, listen to what you have to say. And I just always kind of never really paid attention to it. I kind of took it for granted and didn't realize that it was a skill that whether developed or just born with. I think it's really important that we find those things. And yours is in breaking down those problems and making it so that it's easily digestible. And I think that's like wizardry in my mind. I just to be able to know somebody that can do that. So, all right, so let's talk. So you just led your every question's perfect. You're leading right into the next thing. So you just talked about this ability that you have with these problems. So, I call it earned it, learned it, improved your authority. This is the point where I kind of want to talk about like educationally, whether theoretical, book knowledge, schools, traditional, or whatever. Are there any titles or certifications you've earned or any type of, how did you earn it and get to this point in your business from an educational background?
I think that my MBA really only has value because bankers and lawyers will give me an extra few minutes. I could fill the screen with certifications over my career. I think that where I ultimately got the biggest wins for myself that I continue to apply every day, and what I would recommend anybody invest the time in was really a couple of things. The first one is to do a deep dive into neurolinguistic programming, NLP, which the master of NLP is Tony Robbins. And to really learn to hear how people say things versus just what they say. It's a really great skill set to have to really be able to see under the hood when you're having whether it's a business conversation or even a personal conversation. So that would be number one. And the other is that the latter part of my senior sales career, I spent about 7 years mostly just studying how the psychology and the sociology of people, why they buy things, why they cluster together, why they do the things they do. Understanding those is obviously incredibly valuable when you're teaching several hundred salespeople how to close. But they're every bit as valuable when you're negotiating to buy a company, and you're trying to be practical and pragmatic, but at the same time, you're trying to support that founder's earned right to see that business go forward. And so to me, that's probably the three-legged stool. And that's some of where the storytelling comes from, is that combination of listening to where somebody's coming from versus just what they might be saying. And then combining that with my understanding of people and why they do what they do or don't do what they do sometimes. And, how they act when they get into a group. There's mob mentality and a lot of other group type thinks. Understanding all of that stuff helps you to understand things like fear of missing out and other things that people try to apply in business every day. So that would be the big three. I don't know that they officially translated to certifications, but I can tell you that I've made hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars just with mastering those three.
That's incredible. Cool. Every episode I talk to somebody, and we're gearing up for our 100th episode, and I'm trying to pull out some of the best of, like those clips where like my mind just goes, ooh, right? Like the aha moments, the light bulb moments.
Right.
And that was one of them for me, what you just said, like just having that, um, like just going into those couple of areas and how that can make just such a radical shift and learning about other people. And you said something about fear of missing out and that mob mentality, and that's like me all day. Like and I know my daughter already has that too. Like if we put her to bed and we're still out in the living room watching TV, she has to come out a couple more times because it's like, what am I missing? So it's
Yep.
funny when I can see it in other people. That's very cool. Scott, this has been great. I have a couple more questions for you. Doing great on time. I'm going to change gears a little bit. Let's move away. You don't have to move away from business if you don't want to. The way I
Sure.
always ask this is, personally or professionally, just go ahead and tell us something you're truly thankful for.
I think that I've learned so much from so many great people. Um, and I think that what I've learned more than anything else is that even in the darkest moments, professionally or personally, the toughest challenges, that there was an education there. And that, it really depends how hard-headed you are as a learner, how painful the lessons may need to be. I tended to be pretty hard-headed and rebellious when I was young, so the lessons were pretty painful. But what I was really getting in some form or fashion was a paid education in something that was going to be valuable to me later in life, and sometimes completely devoid of pain and just enjoyable. I sold out hockey arenas for events where Tony Robbins was the headliner, and just the ability to sit where the sound mixers are and the guys that are running the videos behind him, and to watch him do what he does and the emotional connection that he has with people as an example. But at the same time, my dad owned an accounting practice and he handled 2,000 small businesses. And I'm very fortunate that I can hire people to do the minutia of accounting, because I'd rather chew glass than do bookkeeping. But I got to watch my dad grow this practice, and I realized that at their roots, every company is really the same. And so, like, all these lessons, some more painful than others, I think as much as anything, it's being thankful for those people that I intersected with and continue to intersect with, but also just for the journey. I mean, mine is like a crazy family circus cartoon with a dotted line going all over the place, which is how I ended up with so many different, weird, not obviously connecting career choices. And yet, it's all of that experience that makes me so comfortable in where I can really drop myself in any environment and be okay. So it's the combination of the people and the journey that I would be most thankful for.
Love that. Love that. I too am the son of an accountant.
Okay.
And I too
There needs to
would
be
much rather.
there needs to be a support group for
Yeah, it's funny.
children. And
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. Yeah, I too would rather, much to my dad's chagrin, would rather chew glass than, do the bookkeeping. Even in my business, I hired somebody to do that. My dad does my taxes, but I have a local bookkeeper to help me with the books, and then I've connected the two of them, and I'm like, hey, you guys can just tell me where I'm going wrong, what I'm doing right, what I need to do, how I should spend this, how I should save this, or what I need to do, because I don't want to figure that out. You guys know that. That's your lane, right? Stay in your lane. My lane. And my dad I think had aspirations of me growing up and us having that family accounting practice. And by the time I was 18, I think he realized that dream that ship had sailed. It wasn't going to happen. So, all right, cool. I got one more question for you.
okay.
And this is sometimes a biggie. In every business, we get asked things over and over again. Like there's these pressing questions that people have when we explain things. And the reason why a lot of websites have FAQ, frequently asked question pages on their websites. But we only need one biggie. Is there that one question that you just seem to find yourself getting asked over and over again? And I want to give you the opportunity to answer it on video so that you can go back and edit this section and put it out there. Like, here, if you're thinking about this question, here's the answer. What would that be?
I think that especially over the last decade, what people have asked me most about is the mechanics of either buying or then operating companies. neither one is particularly complex. In some ways, it's easier to buy a company. The due diligence is more complex, but it's easier to buy a company than it is to buy real estate because, generally speaking, most of the companies we buy don't have real estate. We have a component for it in the fund, but there's no deed typically. We're talking about parts and pieces. And in many cases, things that can't be quantified as a hard asset, like a paperclip, things like goodwill that are tough to price. But at the end of the day, buying a business is really no different than walking in and buying anything else in at Target or Walmart, where you're looking at 20 different of the same thing and you're making a value judgment on why you're going to pick one over the other. So that's a lot of the conversation around acquiring a businesses. Burgeon does it a little bit different. We do a small cash down payment, and then we give the sellers the option to either carry a low or no interest note for a period of time for the balance, or the better option is that they can convert that outstanding balance to shares in the fund. And so what they've done is they've turned their life's work into an annuity that will continue to pay them and their family for as long as they keep that position in the fund. And that's one of the best ways, in my mind, to honor that business. In terms of operating a business, it's really no different than operating your personal finance. Your focus should always be more coming in than going out.
Right.
And I think that you can do all of that and still honor the people that are running the business. But as complex as companies look from the outside, it really is going to come down to you have more coming in than going out. Or if there's going to be a gap, that you have a plan for offsetting that. So if a company goes into grow mode and it has to dip into its cash reserves, for example, that there's a clear plan for when that's going to start and stop. But at its roots, companies get sprained ankles just like people do. And companies get strep throat just like children do. And companies break down at the side of the road just like cars do. And so at their roots, they're truly no different. They just have more moving pieces. And so my responsibility to my investors, to the sponsors of the fund, and to the employees and customers, to all the stakeholders of these companies, is to really be the one that kind of stands in the front of the room with that conductor's baton and says, this is the way we're going to go. This is how we're going to do it. But at the same time, to also be a really great listener, because again, tapping into that institutional knowledge base there's a lot of valuable information in that base if you tap into it and you just ask really good questions. So I would say the two most common have been, how do you buy a business, or how did you buy this business? Or what's it like running a company? A really long time ago, I owned a nightclub, and everybody thinks they want to own a bar and write a book. And I used to tell people the reason that you want to own a bar is because you see what's happening out here. If you walk through that swinging door, you'll see the chaos. That's really what it's like running a bar. But I mean, I've had those questions now for a decade plus. My answers haven't really changed. So those would be the two biggies.
I love that. That is awesome. Scott, I really do appreciate you coming on Meet the Experts. It was a fun interview. I told you it would go quick. Scott Hoffman, MBA. If you want to reach out, and Scott, if somebody wants to learn more, you go ahead and email scott@burgeonfund.com, as it is on that ticker going that way, scott@burgeonfund.com. Scott, thanks again for being a guest on Meet the Experts. It was great talking to you today.
Thank you, Jay. Have a great day.
You too. Very, very fun. Look, this whole buying of businesses, buying and selling, mergers and acquisition space is very new to me. And I find it fascinating, and I find it kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm just weird. It's kind of like a sexy thing for me, right? It's like, it sounds so cool that like I want to learn more. So I think these types of interviews really help, because it kind of frames my mind for like, is this something I could do in the future? And I'm sure the answer is yes, but I just have to continue to learn more and hone in, and then eventually kind of understand that due diligence. So but people like Scott, who are experts in this and who do this, are the people to contact for that, for right now. And that's who I would go to if I had questions. So I told you, if you stuck around to the end of the episode, I would tell you how you could be a guest on Meet the Experts. And there it is, www.meettheexpertspodcast.com, meet the experts with an S, podcast.com, and go read all about it, learn what you get, what you don't get, what you could pay for if you wanted to or not. But go ahead, and if you're interested, just fill out the form, book your sound check. You'll do a sound check with Chris on our team, and then we'll schedule the episode, and off we go. We'll record just like I did with Scott. So until the next episode, like I said, we're coming up. We've got a few more before our fun 100th. Maybe we'll call it the fundreth. Anyway, that was just me on a tangent. But yeah, have a great day. Take care. Be good to one another, and we'll see you on the next episode of Meet